blood-soaked, sleep-deprived, and completely naked. Welcome to life as a Viking berserker, where your greatest accomplishment is dying before the mushrooms wear off. Picture this. It's 971 CE in the fjords of Norway. While other warriors get to wear reasonable armor and fight with some semblance of self-preservation, you're the special kind of warrior who's expected to strip down, consume questionable fungi, and charge into battle like a rabid bear having a particularly bad day. Bjorn Broddason was one such unfortunate soul. At 20 summers old, he had the misfortune of being naturally brawny and quick to anger, two qualities that made his chieftain Thorvald rub his hands together with glee and say, "That one. He'll make an excellent berserker." Bjorn didn't particularly want to be a berserker. In fact, he had rather enjoyed his previous occupation of shipbuilding. But when your chieftain points at you and says, "Berserker training," you don't exactly have the option of submitting a formal letter of resignation. But what about Harold? Bjorn had protested. "He's much angrier than me. Last week, he punched a hole in his shield just because his porridge was cold." Thorvald had merely laughed. "Harold lacks how shall I put it? Your particular blend of controllable insanity." And that was perhaps the cruelest irony of being a berserker in Norse society. You weren't chosen because you were genuinely unhinged. You were chosen because you could be temporarily unhinged when it was convenient for everyone else. The training was, to put it mildly, absolutely terrible. While regular warriors learned proper shield techniques and sword work, berserkers practiced something far worse: how to willingly abandon all self-control while still somehow following orders. It was like being told to get falling down drunk, but only knocking over the furniture your commander wanted knocked over. "The key," explained Bjorn's trainer, an old berserker named Ulf who was missing an eye, 3 fingers, and apparently any sense of self-preservation, is to channel the fury of the bear or wolf spirits, but not too much. Too much and you'll attack our own men. Too little and you're just an angry naked man on a battlefield, which is considerably less intimidating than you'd think. One of the most absurd aspects of berserker life was the pre-battle ritual. Regular warriors got to have a nice meal, sharpen their weapons, and perhaps say a prayer to Thor or Odin. Berserkers? They got to ingest a concoction of mushrooms, herbs, and alcohol that would make even the most hardened mead drinker question their life choices. "What's in this?" Bjorn asked the first time he was handed the frothing wooden cup before battle. "Best not to ask," Ulf replied. "Just know that if you start seeing Odin's ravens having a conversation with you, you've had exactly the right amount." The substance, likely a mixture of bog myrtle, mushrooms containing muscimol, and alcohol, induced a trance-like state that made berserkers feel no pain and fear no death. Historically accurate and absolutely terrible for your long-term health prospects. Then there was the dress code, or rather, the complete lack thereof. While other warriors got increasingly sophisticated armor as the Viking Age progressed, berserkers were expected to fight either in animal skins or, more terrifyingly, completely naked. "Why can't we wear armor again?" Bjorn asked Ulf before his first raid. 3 reasons, Ulf explained patiently. First, the spirits of the bear and wolf don't wear armor. Second, going into battle naked shows your contempt for death and injury. And third, it terrifies the enemy. Nothing says, "I'm going to end your entire existence," quite like a screaming naked man charging at you with an axe. "But what about arrows?" Bjorn asked reasonably. "You won't feel them," Ulf assured him. "At least, not until the battle fury wears off. Then you'll feel everything all at once, which is..." He trailed off. "Well, let's just say there's a reason most berserkers don't live to grow old." The social standing of berserkers was another delightful contradiction. They were simultaneously feared, respected, and treated like dangerous tools rather than honored warriors. When not in battle, berserkers often found themselves socially isolated. After all, who wants to invite the man who might fly into a murderous rage over a spilled drink to their family feast? "People used to invite me to weddings," Bjorn complained to Ulf after a particularly successful, meaning they both survived, raid on a monastery in Ireland. "They still will," Ulf replied. "But now they'll do it because they're afraid not to, rather than because they want your company." This was painfully accurate. In Norse society, berserkers occupied an uncomfortable position, respected for their battle prowess but viewed with suspicion and fear in everyday life. They were considered closer to wild animals than men, which made for rather awkward social situations. Take marriage prospects, for instance. Bjorn had been courting Eriken Jordsdottir before his berserker designation. Afterward, her father suddenly developed a mysterious objection. "It's not that I don't think you're a fine warrior," Erika's father explained awkwardly. "It's just that I'd prefer my daughter marry someone who's less likely to mistake a family disagreement for a call to battle." "I would never hurt Erika," Bjorn protested. "Not intentionally," her father agreed. "But berserkers aren't known for their self-control, are they?" The berserker's life expectancy was another cheerful aspect of the profession. While regular Viking warriors could hope to survive into middle age or beyond if they were skilled and lucky, berserkers tended to have dramatically shorter careers. "How long have you been a berserker?" Bjorn asked Ulf one evening as they sat by the fire, Ulf wincing as he applied a poultice to a wound that definitely needed stitches. 15 years, Ulf replied, taking a long drink of ale. "Is that unusual?" "Most don't see 5, Ulf said bluntly. "You either die in battle, die from wounds after battle, or the battle fury starts to eat away at your mind until you can't tell friend from foe anymore. Then your own people have to." He drew a finger across his throat. "Wonderful," Bjorn muttered. Even the famous berserker battle immunity had its significant downsides. Yes, berserkers felt no pain during combat thanks to their drug-induced state. But the human body has pain for a reason. It tells you to stop doing the thing that's causing damage. Without that warning system, berserkers would continue fighting despite grievous wounds, often dying from injuries they didn't even realize they had. After his third battle, Bjorn discovered he had taken an arrow through his thigh only when he collapsed while trying to board the ship for the journey home. "How did I not notice?" he asked, gritting his teeth as Ulf yanked the arrow out without ceremony. "That's the berserker way," Ulf said with a grim smile. "You feel nothing during the fight and everything afterward. The gods have a sense of humor, don't they?" By 973 CE, 2 years into his unwanted career, Bjorn had become notorious enough that his mere presence on the battlefield caused enemy lines to break. This would have been a point of pride, except that his own side's warriors also gave him a wide berth. "They're afraid of me," he observed to Ulf as they prepared for another raid. "Of course they are," Ulf replied matter-of-factly. "You've killed 30 men that we know of. You fight with no regard for your own safety. And last month you bit through a man's mail shirt." "I did what? You don't remember?" "You were quite proud of it at the time. Kept spitting out metal links for days afterward." As the Viking Age progressed, the position of berserkers in society became increasingly precarious. As Christianity began to spread through Scandinavia, these warriors associated with pagan ritual and animal spirits became even more marginalized. By the time King Harald Hardrada outlawed berserkers in the 11th century, they had already become living anachronisms. "Times are changing," Ulf told Bjorn one night, looking uncharacteristically contemplative. "The new ways have no place for men like us. Soon, they'll say we were just stories to frighten children." "Would that be so bad?" Bjorn asked. Ulf laughed without humor. "Perhaps not. But what does a berserker do when there's no more need for berserkers?" The answer, it turned out, wasn't pleasant. Many former berserkers became mercenaries or outlaws, unable to reintegrate into a society that had moved beyond them. Others simply drank themselves to death, their bodies and minds too damaged by years of battle fury to function in peacetime. Bjorn was more fortunate than most. After 5 years as a berserker, having survived against all odds, he found himself in the service of a pragmatic chieftain who saw the changing times and gave Bjorn a choice: adapt or die. "You can be a shipbuilder again," the chieftain offered, "if you can prove you're no longer ruled by the bear spirit." It wasn't easy. Years of induced rage had left their mark on Bjorn's mind. But slowly, painfully, he relearned control. He stopped taking the mushroom mixtures, suffered through the withdrawal that made him feel like his skin was on fire, and eventually returned to his first love of working with wood rather than splitting skulls. When he finally married at 30, not Erica, who had understandably married someone less likely to come home covered in other people's blood, but a widow named Ira who claimed she preferred a reformed berserker to a boring farmer. His wedding feast was attended by precisely one former comrade, old one-eyed Ulf. To survival, Ulf toasted, raising his cup. To survival, Bjorn agreed. Ulf died the following winter, not in glorious battle as a proper berserker should, but from a persistent cough that turned his lungs to water. As Bjorn helped prepare his old friend's body for burial, he noticed the dozens of scars that mapped Ulf's life story. The irony of being a berserker, Bjorn later told his wide-eyed stepchildren when they begged for stories of his warrior days, is that we were considered the most fearsome of all Vikings, but we were also the most expendable. We were weapons, not men. And like all weapons, we were valued only as long as there was fighting to be done. He would lift his shirt to show the map of scars across his torso. Each of these is a wound I didn't feel when it happened. That's not bravery, it's stupidity. Real courage is facing pain knowing it will hurt. Of course, Bjorn's story of survival was the exception, not the rule. For most berserkers, the end came quickly and violently. They lived by the mushroom and died by the sword, forgotten as soon as the battle songs ended. So next time you think being a Viking sounds glamorous, remember Bjorn and his berserker brethren. The elite warriors who fought naked, high on mushrooms, and with all the self-preservation instinct of a lemming with a death wish. They weren't just willing to die for their chieftains. They were expected to. And in Norse society, that was perhaps the cruelest joke of all. When your greatest value is how spectacularly you can throw your life away, you're not really a warrior. You're just a really committed form of suicide.